I know many of you all may be thinking, oh, when people see this title, Pivoting in Your Career, that this is a presentation that is to get people to kind of talk about pivoting out, but that is not what this is actually about. And so here I have the purpose. I want you all to think about, well, the reason why we're having this conversation is it's for individuals that are considering leaving the field of SLP, okay? Individuals that are bored in their current setting, or just for individuals that want to maximize their career potential. And so everything starts with a conversation. A lot of things that happen to us, that we start to think about, we can't really put it into action until we actually start to ask ourselves these hard questions and put it into conversation. And so that's what I intend for us to do this evening. Okay, so what is a pivot? When I was in high school, I played basketball in high school and in college, right? And so there's a term called a pivot. And so if you're a basketball person, a pivot allows you to move around, but you don't necessarily pick up the leg that you're pivoting, right? And so I have some definitions for us to just look at. And so the first one is, okay, a pivot, it completely changes the way in which one does something. So when you're pivoting, you can change the way you do something. Or the second definition says it's the central point, pin, or shaft on which a mechanism turns or oscillates. And I think that that's very important, because in pivoting, when we're talking about your career, there is going to be a change. And it doesn't have to be a total change, right? But it just allows you to, a pivot also allows you to turn. And so I think that it's noteworthy for us to look at this definition as it relates to what we're talking about this evening. Okay. So what exactly is pivoting in your career? Okay, so the first one is pivoting in your career. It's the act of pursuing an occupation outside of your current occupation. So, for example, you may be, let's just say, a chemist, right? And you want to move from that occupation and say, hey, I want to be an SLP, right? So you can pivot totally out of your career. Okay, so that's one way that you can pivot. Another way that you can pivot is you can pivot your career is pursuing one career setting, going from one career setting to another career setting within the same field. A lot of times what we do in speech pathology, because we have such a vast variety, our scope of practice, and we have so many different settings. And so a lot of times people think pivoting, when people are looking at this topic, they may just think, oh, going from SLP to something else. But no, the other way that you can pivot is just from one setting to another. Okay. And then the third question that this question, number 3, what I want you all to ask yourself is, which pivoting description best describes your situation? Is it 1 or is it 2? Okay. And I know that there's 6 of us on the line, so I love this to be interactive. And so before I go any further, I just kind of want us to kind of break into this. And I just want to see who's in the room. And if you could tell us what setting you're in, okay? If you're in a pivot, like myself, if you're considering pivoting, right? Or if none of this, you're just here. And so that's important I think that's important for us as we're having this conversation. So everyone wouldn't mind, and when I ask you, when you're telling us what setting, tell us how many settings have you been in? If the setting that you're in, have you been in the setting since you started your career or not? So I'll just hand it over to Terry, if we can start with you.
Okay. Well, I've always pivoted in my career. I worked in the school system. At the time it was the Board of Ed, now it's called the DOE.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even in that setting, I went from speech teacher to speech and language evaluator.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went into I'm still in early intervention, but I also did contractual work for the DOE. Did that, got bought with that. I'm a person that got to keep moving, so, I did contracting. Then I went into early intervention, which I love and which I'm still there. But within that as well, I'm a evaluation representative,
Mhm,
in which I go and collect all the evaluations and talk
mhm,
to all the people who did the evaluations, like the OT, PT, psych. And
mhm,
then we all come up with what kind of goals we're going to have for this child. And then I go over to the early intervention officials and listen to what the parents want and what the EIOD wants, and then put my input in. So I do a lot with early intervention, as well as 2016, I went into Lehman College, and I'm part of the partnership of early intervention with
mhm.
Lehman College, in which I'm teaching students how to become speech and language pathologists. You know,
Hey.
also writing simulations for the college. I've done that,
Mhm,
and now I'm working with the CUNY system, in which we're doing IPEs, where all the professionals are together who work in the college, like OT, PT, nursing. So I'm
mhm.
into writing and also participating in IPEs. I'm always pivoting, always.
All right, you are definitely pivoting. Before I throw it to Juliet, can you tell us which setting you've been in the longest?
For me,
Yes,
yeah, basically early intervention.
early
I've
intervention.
been in early intervention since 1996.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm a
all right.
dinosaur, but I'm alive now.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. Juliet, can you tell us a little bit about you and if you are in a pivot, considering pivoting, what setting you're in and what setting you've been in the longest?
Oh wow, I am always pivoting. And that's the one thing I love about speech in our field is because when you get bored, you can always pivot and go to another setting as opposed to leaving the field. So when people come to me, and I get it a lot, where people are disgruntled and with their current situations, going, okay, there are other things you can do within the field. I mean, you guys know we've spent a lot of money to get these degrees, so we don't want to. I don't encourage people to leave, and that's one of the things that S.I.S.T.A.s does. One of our things is retention,
Mhm.
not just recruitment, but retention. So I'm glad you're talking about this, because that's a major um, part of what we do and what we're trying to encourage. And so I appreciate this topic. I am currently, oh my gosh, um, our business is just growing. So I'm actually, we have a healthcare company, but it includes rehabilitation services. So not only am I overseeing speech pathologists, but PT and OT and mental health counselors. So, so I've had to make some adjustments, learn some new things. And, so it's been kind of stressful for me lately. But the great thing about our field is we are able to pivot without leaving it totally. And I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you have. You have. Oh, one more, but which one have you been in the longest? Which setting?
Oh my gosh. So I think I've been contracting
Okay.
the longest.
Okay.
I
Okay.
contract SOP. I like the freedom of that.
Okay. Yes. I love that.
Not being tied to a building. I can come and go as I kind of please.
I love that too. All right, Latavia, I'm throw the torch to you.
Sorry about that. Well, I guess out of everyone, I'm kind of a baby in speech.
Mhm.
I've only been practicing for 8 years. So my longest is school setting. Um, and I am considering pivoting. Just but I think it's gonna be difficult for me just because I'm also in a wheelchair. So I feel like when I want to pivot, there's other extraneous factors that I got to think about
We're going to
um
talk about that
that
too.
will prevent me from pivoting the way that I want to.
Mhm.
But I'm currently in school and I'm also an adjunct professor at Lehman College. So
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much
yeah.
for giving. We're going to talk about some of the things to consider in pivoting. So just stay with me. We're gonna cover some of that. Thank you so much for sharing. Naz, can
Mhm.
you go ahead and give us some insight on where you are in the pivot?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Nastasia. I've been in SLP for a little over 2 years. I work for the New York City Department of Education. And at this point, I am looking to leave the field. I'm tired and I'm burnt out. I also think that it's because of the PTSD and the stress that I experienced in grad school. Um, and I no longer want to pursue this career. I know that for a fact. So I am looking into tech. That's something that's really big. But I'm not too confident because we have, as an SLP, it's a specialty. So I think a lot of my skills are transferable. I also have a social service background as a case manager. I've worked in different settings there. And so I'm kind of afraid that with my speech degree, I can't really go too far. But I do know that I am pursuing a career in tech that has flexibility, that also that they respect autonomy, and I'm not confined to a schedule. This schedule just it doesn't even work for me. There's little to no flexibility. I did think at some point that I would love the school setting, but I don't love it at all. And I just really want out. I'm just scared and I don't know which direction to go. So yeah.
Did you say your name was Nastasia?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna put my email in the chat before we're done and take it and email me and let's talk. I can give you some, yeah, I can give you some information on, yeah, sorry, my husband just, I can give you just some information on tech and some other things that I think you should consider. But yeah, let's chat. I'm so glad we're having this conversation and
Yes,
that,
me too. And thank you ladies for putting this together because it's really what I mean, a lot of the groups I'm in on Facebook, this is all that everyone's talking about, pivoting into different careers, but just not knowing how to. So thank you guys.
We're going to talk about that. And again, I just want to, because this is, this is a conversation that needs to be had, but I just want to like be clear, like I want, like I said, this is for people, this is for all types of people. Some of you all are younger in your career right now, and so this may not be on your mind. Some of you are more advanced in your career, and it's not on your mind at all. But either way, like we talked, there's so much that you can do, and I don't think people realize how much you can do that kind of in speech that relates to speech, or if you just want to pivot, how to do it. So this is like right on time. I'm like learning so much just from hearing your stories. Daria, can you give us some information about you and where you are in your pivot?
Hi. Wow. I feel like I'm approaching a pivot. And my heart goes out to you, Nastasia, because I would say I started in 92 working in the schools. And around 2000, I was probably 8 years in, and I started to do early intervention too. So I was consumed with doing both, and I was starting to feel burnout. And then I just said, what if I go back to school and do supervision? So I went back and got a degree in school administration and supervision. And so so I guess I kind of pivoted from being a therapist for 10 years to being a supervisor now for 20 years. So I feel I have to say my new hires and my CFs, they rejuvenate me when I'm feeling worn out and tired. And that's how I'm feeling right now because I'm 2 years before retirement. And I know that I want to pivot again into, okay, I guess I'm ready to go back and do therapy again. So I'm approaching a pivot. I feel like I want to do something within the next 2 years, get into maybe preschool. I haven't done a lot with preschool. And then possibly get my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday job kind of going. So like I just don't want to work as hard, as much. And, a lot of what we do is sometimes it feels like 60-40, like with 60 being more administrative than the therapy, and the paperwork stuff can really consume you with what we do. I just say to you, Nastasia, hold on.
Thank you.
Yeah, hold on, girl, because we've all been where you were. Trust me, we've all been where you were. But I'm kind of exiting, and I don't know what my next pivot is going to be, but I know I still want to work with kids. I still make it work for me and not work as hard, if that makes any sense. But I'm ready for a pivot.
Thank you so much for sharing, Daria. Ayodele, are you still on here? Or I can't see everyone. So if I haven't called your name, just go ahead and jump in. The questions
Yes,
are.
I'm here. I'm
You're
here.
here? Okay, go
Oh,
ahead.
and it's so nice that you can say my name. Okay. Yeah, I've been in speech for over 20 years, and my first population was multiply handicapped students. Then I went back to graduate school, and since then I've worked with, well, I did early intervention. I right now I do CPSE and middle school students, and I've done elementary school students, and I've done adults, regular rehab at home therapy. But I say I'm happiest with I love my middle school students, but I'm gonna tell you, there's nothing like the CPSE. So like all the people who want to pivot, because I'm gonna pivot in a few years with Daria to strictly CPSE. I can't run after those little EI kids crying over nothing. But I want to be with my little CPS kids where by the end of the year they're starting to write a little bit, where they know their letters, where they're starting to have real conversation. You can see their real personality come out, and where you can see, oh, this person, this it was just a little glitch. They're going to be a scholar one day. When you can see that in a person, that's where I'm pivoting towards, but I'm not ready for the pivot because my child is only 11 and I pay for private school.
Mhm.
So
That's the real, that's,
so
that's
I'm gonna hang on in there with the Board of Ed. And because my school isn't some people like Nastasia, some people work in, I'm gonna tell you, the Board of Ed could be a beast. Some people work in schools, like, because I'm in the DOE as well. Some people work in schools where the principal's the demon, where the AP is the demigod, and where you're just dealing with so much, and but I work in a place where I do, like, say if I voice my opinion, it's respected. So I do appreciate that, and I can go on in that. But my principal's my age, so she's ready to retire too. So, I'll see how long I stay at the DOE, but I'm ready to pivot towards, with Daria, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday work. And I'll work, I'll work 6 hours a day those 3 days, but after that, you can't count on me.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that wants to share before I go on?
Just to add on to what she was saying, your pivot might just be the population. If you stay in school age, I'm not sure of the population you work with, but when I first started, I was working with children on the spectrum. And sometimes if you didn't see lots of gains or how things could become very frustrating for you, it might just be changing the population that you work with. Like Ayadeli works with middle school. I work with, and she mentioned a number of different populations she worked with throughout the year. Sometimes that rejuvenates you again because you almost want to go back to theory again. How do I work with this population versus it's just different. Like, how do I work with this new population? Kind of gets you rejuvenated again to working with them. So you might want to just sometimes changing your school, like she's like Ayadeli said, changing your school, you're changing your school family. A lot of things can kind of help to rejuvenate you, or falling back. One thing with working for the schools, I would encourage anyone to do it because it's a great retirement plan and how you can save for.
Oh, you're muted.
Those who've done EI, and I don't know, Terry could attest to it too. Like there's different.
She's muted again.
I would encourage leaving the schools, but maybe changing your population, Nastasia?
So so this is the thing. I absolutely love my middle and high school students. I'm about 15 minutes away from home. I'm a brand new SLP for this particular school. There's 5 schools on campus. Um, I think what it is that there isn't enough support. And also, when I go into my IEP meetings, I'm being silenced because, like, just for an example, I have a couple of students that I would like to decertify, and I was told not to decertify them because my principal gets $10,000 per child that stays with an IEP at her school. And so when you're silencing me as a provider, I look like most of my students. So like I understand their struggles, but also the thing about speech is you teach them the strategies. They prove that they can use it throughout the curriculum. And the goal is to decertify them, not to keep them in services. And when you're being silenced, your voice is not being heard. It's just like, why am I even here providing services?
Oh, wow. That is
Um,
definitely understandable.
I
But
I can
I've
definitely
seen that before. I've seen that before.
I
yeah,
yeah.
can definitely understand where you're coming from. I would say being as an independent contractor, it kind of makes it easier for me to advocate for my students because I'm not beholden to the DOE in that way. But what I can say is when they do that, I typically like to go back to the OSHA code of ethics because I've been told to change recommendations because now they're in high school. So I typically go back to the OSHA code of ethics and I say, listen, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm gonna uphold my license. So whatever you decide to do on your end, that's what you're deciding to do on your end. Here's my recommendation. This is the ethics that I need to follow. If you decide to do something different, that is on you, but I'm not doing that. And that's one way. And I feel like it also comes from a place of not knowing what SOPs do and understanding that we're valuable. They just think that we're, glorified teachers and we're there to take over teachers' jobs, and that's the end of the story. You can't take over my job. Um, and it becomes a power struggle. So I typically um say, listen, I'm not trying to take over your job. I'm trying to help your student in this classroom access the material because he or she cannot access the material without breaking down the language. So here's what you can do inside of your room along with what I'm doing to help this student, right? Because that's what we all want to do at the end of the day. That's
Right.
all the same goal. Here's what you can do. Here's what we need to do. And let's try to work together. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And you have to end up being a lone wolf. Um, but I think I typically stay in schools because these students don't have a voice. And me going through the special education system, thank God my mom never decided to do that for me. She always kept me in general ed, but I was under the umbrella of special ed.
Mm.
They don't have a voice. They need someone to speak for them. And I understand the bureaucratic nonsense is frustrating, but that's why I stick with it. So if you love your students, let that remind you of why you're there.
Mm.
Thank you
and
so
stick
much.
with it, and
Uh,
definitely stick with it, Nastasia, because if you were one of my therapists, and like I said, I currently supervise in the schools, and I'd say, sounds like you just made a pivot to this population that you're working with, that I would hold on a little longer, because you've already mentioned this is 15 minutes away from your house. You got, you could change schools and now be an hour away from your house with
Right.
a deafened bureaucracy that you're dealing with. It sounds like, you got to pick your battles right now. And I can see what a lot in the high schools, there are kids that are no longer coming. They're not even coming enough to get a quick assessment to determine, do they still need the services? So at the end of the day, when the school is saying, well, we still want to keep the services, a happy medium sometimes is decreasing it to one time, so that they're still getting the services. Or if they feel, if you take away their sole service, they're not going to get the testing mods anymore, or they might not get, you know, when they graduate, supports that could help them in college. So it's a tricky, slippery
Yeah, it's
slide
a tricky, slippery.
when you want to take away services, especially in the high school. Do we feel that, hey, this child could have have plateaued? You know, that's something you really can't say that this child is plateaued. You got to be very picky and with your words, especially in the high school level, when you're looking at decertifying or terminating a child. So, you know, sometimes the happy medium is, look, I feel he doesn't need any more. You're not even going to go for declassification if speech is the only service. You know, it's a hard that's a hard call.
It's
That's
tricky.
a
It's
very,
tricky.
very hard call.
It's tricky because even though the student might not need you, they still might need those testing modifications to get them through. And if you're the only classification on the IEP, that's the only way they're going to get those testing mods. But
Yeah.
they need those supports to be successful in the classroom. And I will say this, majority of my career, because I just love high school students. I don't know, it's just something I see myself in them because I was at a point where I didn't want to go to speech anymore either. So with high school students, it's a tricky, slippery slope. They don't want to come see you. They feel like you're like all the other speech therapists that's just gonna say, here, do this and be the end of the day. So they don't see any benefit in it for them. So
Yeah.
if your students connect with you on that level, they might not get another speech therapist that connects with
That's going
them.
to advocate the way you've advocated for
Advocate
them.
for
So
them.
don't feel like you might lose the battle but not the war. You might, in one case, you feel your voice wasn't heard, but you know, for the next one, you know, you're sticking to your guns. This one really doesn't need X, Y, and Z. So that's why I say you got to pick your battles, but don't internalize it and personalize it to be like someone's taking away your voice, because at the end of the day, we are going to advocate for kids.
And I love this dialogue that's going on. I want to keep us moving forward. So I want to hear from Raquel and then Nastasia, and then we're gonna keep going because I don't want to keep y'all too late. But I love this interaction and I love the conversation and the support that is going on, because
you know why? Because we've all been where Nastasia was. We all have been there. Like, I'm now 29 years in, and I'm ready to see the light at the end of the tunnel and retire. But when I hear a new therapist that, you know, of course, we're still putting, you know, in the first 5 years, you're putting theory and practice together. So, you know, what do you mean that I can't certify this kid? I know that this child no longer needs it. So it's hard when we want to stick to our guns, but you'll learn through trial and error that you got to play some things by ear, and sometimes losing the battle is not losing the war, if that makes any sense.
And if I can just interject really quickly, that it sounds like that, I don't know if you guys have the consultation module, but before complete dismissal, if you have that, then they go on consultation where you're not directly pulling them. So that's that little happy medium that Daria was talking about.
Yeah, that happy medium we don't have in New York. We don't have consultation.
Oh, you don't have
consultation? We have that in Chicago.
Yeah, we don't have it in New York.
We have it in Chicago and
we can classify a student, and now that's saying we've removed the services away for a year, and then for a year you can do like a monthly check-in. That's not even done. Yeah. You're not even doing encounter attendance in our system to show that you've been providing services to the student.
Okay.
Okay. Move it. I'm sorry, guys. I just let me get Raquel and Nastasia.
One thing. Naz, you know, we have mentors in sisters. So anytime you want to talk, you have us. You have all of us who are talking to you right now.
Yes,
so
thank you.
Talk to you and help you. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Blessing.
Okay. Go ahead, Raquel.
Okay. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good night, everybody. My name is Raquel Gabriel. I was a speech therapist with the New York City DOE for the last 25 years. I recently separated from service to explore other things. But I wanted to speak to, is it Naz? The young lady who was talking to earlier, who was speaking earlier about feeling silenced and wanting to advocate for your students. Now, I can definitely relate to that, and I'm sure we all can, regardless of which population we've worked with. When you're a new therapist in a school or any sort of setting, it is important to establish your voice and to let them know that you're a professional. Sometimes they can, undermine the things that you say or the recommendations that you make. And there are two things that I always fall back on. One was, I think, Latavia had mentioned before about the ASHA Code of Ethics, okay? ASHA Code of Ethics are there, they're there to protect us and to sort of let other professionals know what our roles are in case they become confused. Also, test scores don't lie. If a student has plateaued, and the data will show that. So once you keep proper records and you're able to back up your recommendations with things like test scores, then I don't believe you should have a problem, and you will gain the respect of your colleagues in that way. And also remember that in terms of advocating for your students, arming the parents with their rights and letting them know their rights, because the parents are the biggest advocates for their students. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the day, we're civil servants and we're working for them. So we need to arm them as well, because again, many of the students look like us, and it really hurts my heart when the system doesn't work for our students. So I just wanted to give that input.
Okay, you guys, thank you for this dialogue again. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation. We're gonna move on. Jenny Blake, when I'm doing my research, she says a career pivot involves concentrating on aspects that are working while purposefully going in a new related direction. And so, as we all have said, you can pivot out of your career, you can pivot within your career, right? And so, but it's just about moving, it's about moving forward and being purposeful in your movement. And so I know some of that, I just had you all talk about your settings that you're in, where you are as it relates to the pivot. And that's why I had you all do that, to identify kind of where you are, and just to know that, we're all in different places, and it's okay. Where I remember when I first graduated, I think after my first year, I was like, nope. I was like, no, I'm bored, or I'm not, and here I am about, I think 19 years in, because I was able to pivot into different settings and find, and learn different skills and things. And so, it doesn't always mean I know where, a lot of us know where you are, Nastasia, and just want to know, just hang in there. I think that this, as I spoke or stated earlier, that you can't really make a decision until you start having this conversation, and luckily tonight you have the, opportunity to have this conversation with Sisters in Speech. And so I'm hoping that something that I say or someone else says will really help you this evening, and not just her, but everybody else that's on the line. So there are some things that in me going through my own experience and pivoting, there's something that I like to do to myself, and it's called check in with a check up. And so these are questions that I have asked myself as I have matriculated on through my career and have just went from one setting to another. And the first question is, where am I? And this question is so important. I think out of all the questions, first of all, let me back up. Questions, of course, are wonderful to have, and questions give you data. They give you information. That's questions, when you ask yourself questions, it helps you localize yourself. And so this first question, where am I? That's what I want you all to all ask yourself, right? You can't know where you're going until you know where you are, right? And just if you think about a GPS, right? A GPS can take you to your destination, but before it takes you to your destination, you have to put in where you actually are. And so I want you all to ask yourself, or write that down as we are having this conversation. And where am I is a location question. It helps you localize yourself. It helps you identify where you are. And that is one of the most important questions answers or questions that you can answer, right? Because then it can tell you where you're going. So the second question, moving on to my second question that I want you all to ask, and as I've said, these are questions that I've asked myself, right? Where do I want to be? So I'm asking you tonight, sisters, where do you want to be? Okay, so where am I? And then where do I want to be? Now, within those two questions, that's a lot of information that that you should be that you can gather from yourself. I don't know where you want to be. I know where I want to be, right? But this is a time where you're asking yourself these questions. These are reflection, eye-opening questions that are really going to help you when you're looking at your career. And they don't really, we go through grad school, we go through undergrad, and this is never a conversation that we have, but it's a conversation that is so needed, and a conversation, and I even think a course that should be taken, because a lot of times people leave the field, and that happens, but it's not, you don't always have to leave the field. So first question, where am I? Second question, where do I want to be? Third question, how do I feel about where I am? Do you feel good about where you are? Do you feel angry about where you are? Right? Do you feel confused about where you are? Do you feel depressed? These are all feelings that I've had as I have gone through my career, as I am going through my career, and I am making, and I have made some decisions for myself. But as I've said, you having the conversation is the starting point. But you have to really ask yourself these tough questions and then answer them. No one can answer them for you. Whether you're a speech pathologist or a doctor or or a singer, at the end of the day, it comes down to purpose, right? For me and for all of us, right? And so the last question is, okay, what am I going to do about it? Sorry if you can't see it. It's the last question. What am I going to do about it? It's one thing to be not happy in your field. It's one thing to get up and to just feel stagnant, right? But it's another thing to do something about it. Well, I remember when I was living in Kalamazoo, because I live in Chicago now, but I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I remember my pastor, he was talking about something, and getting a doctorate degree has always been a passion of mine, right? I didn't want to get into speech pathology, but I love education. And so I got my doctorate in educational leadership. But I remember going back home, and he did the sermon, and he happened to mention like getting your doctorate. And he said, one of the things that he said was, you can be 34 with a doctorate degree, or you could be 34 without one. And either way, you're going to be 34. Right? So this time next year, you can be in the same position that you are, or you could not. It's all up to you. So as I'm talking, write these down. So when we leave this place, you can really do some soul searching. You can really do a deep dive into, what am I going to do about it? How you feel may help you realize, what, I really like this setting. Or this is really me, or I need to make some tweaks. But nevertheless, these are all important questions that are going to give you all data. Okay. And before I move on, has anyone asked themselves these questions before? Anyone want to chime in?
Yes, I've asked myself those types of
I've-
questions.
Yeah, I've asked myself these same questions.
Okay, good. Did you answer them when you asked yourself the questions?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did answer them.
Yeah, my answers are a little bit more complicated, but
That's okay. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. You may not get the answer right away, or you may get an answer that you're not necessarily ready to deal with. But the point is that you're asking the question, and that you're not avoiding the question. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. So I'm going to tell you all, excuse all this doodle, I must have not seen that, but I want to tell you all a little bit about me. My first job after graduation, I worked in, I'm a person that have worked in multiple settings. So I graduated grad school in 2005. My first job, I worked in the school system, and then I worked for a private practice. In the private practice, you know, they did from like birth all the way. It wasn't early intervention, but you know, birth, and they had all the way to like 18, and then they also had a hospital contract. So I was lucky or blessed enough to, at a young stage in my career, have experience in other settings. So and within my first year, I did hospital, private practice, and I worked in the schools, and then sometimes I did PRN. So within like my first year of being a SLP, I had worked in 4 different settings, right? And so after my first year, I was just like, I wanted to leave where I was living, and I wanted to do travel speech therapy. And so I did travel speech therapy with one of my good girlfriends, and we had a ball, and I did travel speech therapy in the nursing homes. And so it made it a little bit more fun for me, right? Within, when I started doing travel speech therapy, I kind of, you know, I started asking myself that question, like, how do I feel about what I'm doing? You know, and at that point in time, I was like, you know what, I don't think I want to do this. I think I want to be maybe I should go into nursing. Maybe I should be a nurse practitioner. Maybe I should, I just started asking myself these questions because I wasn't necessarily feeling it all the way. But you know, I grew up in an immigrant family. You know, my family's an immigrant. We were immigrants, and you know, my mama was like, "You better go to school on somebody else's money and make sure, because it's not her money. Make sure I finish. Make sure I have a job. Make sure I can provide for myself." You know, so there are different factors that come into place when you're making decisions. And so I was already, I would say about 2006, 2007, I was already ready to switch to nursing. Okay. So I thought. And then in 2008, I moved to the Chicagoland area, right? And I met one of my really good girlfriends, and her name is Regina. And I remember meeting her, and she told me that speech pathology was her second career. And Regina was a little bit, I think she's like 6 or 7 years older than me. I was like, "Your second career?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, what did you do prior to speech pathology?" She was like, "I was an accountant." And I was like, "Oh, okay." You know, but I was so intrigued that she had the gall, the grit, you know, the boldness to actually totally just change her career. And I was just like, "Oh, wow, what made you go into speech pathology?" And she was telling me. And so even at an early age, I kind of felt like I wanted to pivot. But then when I look back at it now, most of it was just because I don't think that I didn't have a mentor. And I didn't have somebody that could kind of guide me, or that could kind of help me through some of the things that I was feeling. I did get through it. Oh. I did get through it, right? But I think I would have been a little bit more happier had I don't even want to say if the word is happier, but I probably would have felt less anxiety, or if I had had someone that kind of could guide me through these feelings and know that, hey, you're not alone. These are some of the things that you can do, right? So when I moved to the Chicagoland area, I was still doing traveling around that time. Then I got into home health. So now I have worked in the hospitals. I have worked in the school system. I had done travel speech therapy, which I love. I have done skilled nursing, acute, you know, whatever. I had done all these different settings within a short period of time. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this time was that I was able, because I had experienced these different settings at such a young stage in my career, other opportunities opened up for me. And actually me going into home health actually led into my independent contracting career and starting my own thing. But I just wanted to give you all a little bit of background so that you can understand. I've been pivoting since I graduated, since I've graduated. And it is something that I think is so important for us to realize, that it it is natural. It doesn't mean you have to just leave your field. But this is something that they don't talk about in grad school. Has anyone ever had this conversation? I guess maybe they don't want to scare people, but I think if as you know, if schools prepare clinicians that these are things that, you know, because this is a reality in our field, people are leaving the field. But I think that if schools prepared people that, hey, you may 10 years from now, you may feel this, or within the five years, this is how you can deal with this, or you may want to look at this or look at that. I think that would help some people that have totally left the field.
Hi, I would agree with you. I went to Howard University for graduate school, and I was really blessed to be in their grant program. I got a grant to go to school, which I had to do a little extra work. And our professor wanted us to all stay on an extra year. I wasn't that committed though, but he wanted us to stay an extra year to do it like a graduate business program, because she wanted us to think more of speech, not just being workers, but to being business owners. And I think that's so important in our time. And I'm not going to say I wish I had done that. I feel I did the right thing. But I think in speech, there's so much you can do. You can do anything. Like I have some people that went to graduate school who work for non-for-profits and do all sorts of things because it is a graduate degree that allows you to be an advocate for the voiceless. There's so many things you could do within the profession. That's all.
Oh, thank you for adding that, Iodele. Actually, I have been on 2 boards for nonprofits, and that's a sector. Yeah. I have been a chair of a board of an organization, and it's going very well. For the organization, I had to leave it, but I still volunteer in the organization just because there are other things I was focusing on. But a lot of people don't even think that there is a whole world out there. If you all get on LinkedIn, there is a whole world out there that actually needs your skill set as a speech pathologist, that you can sit on boards and get paid on. Like, this is a whole nother story, but there are a lot of educational nonprofits that will pay you for your skill set, not to just do speech pathology work, but consultation. And, you know, we are experts in language, and, you know, that is the biggest part of education. And so we see language from a different lens. And so I just want to encourage you all, like you just said, Iodele, there's just so much that I think a lot of us have not thought about, and we're going to kind of brainstorm through some of that as we go on through the night. The pivoting fast is excuse me, it says fast, I should say that. The pivoting fact is that you are not alone. I don't know where this red is coming from, so I just kind of want to give you guys some statistics. Okay, around 70% of all working people are actively looking for a job change. So if you've ever felt like this, you are not alone, okay? Over 39% of people who are considering career changes are motivated by a higher salary, okay? And that was one of the things, actually, when I looked at statistics for like speech pathologists and why they leave the field, if they're leaving or they're transitioning to another setting. A lot of statistics show that salary, like, excuse me, that there's kind of a limit on our salary at a certain point in your field, in our field. 59% of middle income workers are thinking about changing jobs, okay? And then according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, most employees with wages and salaries, they stay at their jobs for an average of 4.6 years. Now, this is different. Like, the research shows that, like, the older you are, the more likely you're going to be staying at your job. But when you're talking about people that are 40 and younger, in that category, they tend to change their jobs. They tend to change their jobs and not stay as long as people that are, I would call them seasoned, right, in their careers. The average age for people to change their career is 39. Okay, so I was thinking about, I think, let's see, I graduated, I was 24, 25. I think I started thinking about pivoting at 25, right? And then most people stay in a career. So when you want to look at, okay, for people that change careers, how long do they stay in that actual career? Most people stay in a career for about like 13 years and 2 months. That's the average length that they stay in a career. Okay. And do we have anyone that's online that has come from a totally different setting that's a speech pathologist now? Or did we all start out as speech pathologists and we are? No? Okay.
Yeah, I was social worker, case manager.
Who's
So
that?
yeah, Nastasia.
Oh,
I
okay,
came
you were
from like a
social
social work,
working. Okay.
yeah, with Child Protective Services here in New York City. So yeah, it's a lot of skill sets. I have another question. You just mentioned something about different opportunities. And it's funny because someone reached out to me on LinkedIn about a language immersion program. I'm bilingual Haitian Creole speaker.
Mhm.
We have a lot of Haitian Creole speakers here in New York City. And
Mhm.
it's funny because there are different
Yes.
job opportunities and translating. I've done interpreting for New York City courts. I'm a certified medical interpreter.
Mhm.
So I've had a lot of opportunities. It's just not, it's there, you know,
Mhm.
it's just being afraid to explore them.
Mhm. And I get it. I get it. I used to I get on LinkedIn a lot more now, but when I started just looking at different nonprofits, and because I do a lot of nonprofit work just because I enjoy, I enjoy the nonprofits that I'm a part of. I just did not realize like all these different educational nonprofits that need people that specialize in language. Or like, I'll give you an example, the nonprofit that I was the chair of, it's called A Glimpse of Africa. And we work with immigrants and refugees and help them acclimate to the United States. And I grew up in Southwest Michigan and Kalamazoo. Like I said, the organization is stationed in Grand Rapids. And so there's another speech pathologist that's a part of the organization besides me. But one of the things that we highlight is education and helping refugees and immigrants understand IEPs. And so when people come to, when African immigrants or immigrants in general they can actually call our organization, and we have people that can help them, that will help them through this. This is one of, I would say, one of the topics that we really are working on and pushing through. But you need people that specialize in that area. And so I would have never thought that that there are other organizations out there that it's not the only thing that we do. That's not the main thing that we do. It's just one of the services that we're providing and help out with. And so, it just takes, thinking out of the box, you all, and figuring out like, how can I really make this degree work for me without having to totally leave the career. I remember going to Mbasla probably in like 2007, and I remember that there was a speech pathologist that really intrigued me, but she had a company and she worked with colleges, and she worked with student athletes and worked with them with their speech, with their pragmatic skills, with how to answer questions, because a lot of student athletes, they would get these interviews and they would answer the questions improperly, or maybe the answer that they gave it didn't highlight them in the best fashion. But I just thought like, man, that was such a cool job. That's something that I would love to do. Right. And so I remember going to that and hearing her speak and thinking, wow, there's a lot that, thinking like I would have never really thought about that. So I'm just encouraging you all to think out of the box. But, I just want you all to know that you are not alone in this. And so these statistics show you that you are not alone if you're thinking about this. They're not specific to speech pathology, but it's information that you can use and help comfort you, I hope, when for you to realize like, hey, I'm not the only one that's out here. You're not alone. You're not out here by yourself. So fulfilled versus satisfied. And I think that these are important to these two definitions, and these two concepts are just important for us to kind of break down and to look at. And I want you all to jump in and just kind of give me your feedback. What does being satisfied and being fulfilled, what do those two words mean to you? You know, and when you're looking at where you are in your career, are you satisfied? Are you satisfied for where you are you fulfilled? And those are two important questions. And I talked about the importance of asking questions. I want you all to kind of just chime in and kind of tell me, do these words mean the same thing? You know, what do you guys think?
So I feel satisfied just being, because I also have my own business as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm satisfied providing services for those who are in need.
Mm-hmm.
Early intervention, even those who ask me to provide services for them, even if it's low pay, because that gives me the satisfaction that I'm helping a child to communicate and help and having a family happy to be able to communicate with their child. So I feel in that sense I'm satisfied and I'm fulfilled, whether it's high pay or whether it's low pay, or whether it's even free. Sometimes I even give them services that are free because that's my heart. My heart is helping those families and those children who need services.
That's awesome. Anybody else? Do these words mean the same thing? Are they different? Are you looking at them? What do these two words mean to you and where you are in your career right now? Do you feel satisfied? Are you fulfilled? What's going on here, guys?
I don't know. I feel satisfied and fulfilled in what I'm doing right now, but I feel like I would want further fulfillment and helping and assisting in another level. So I almost feel like fulfillment is even like the next level, if that makes any sense. Like you could have satisfaction in doing what you're doing and loving what you do, being a support to therapists, being a support to principals, and in turn being a support to those students. But I feel that I will have a greater fulfillment when I'm actually doing therapy again, when I'm working with the kid one-on-one. I don't mean kid, but with the students myself and talking with parents. And that's one aspect I don't have right now as a supervisor.
I just think it's so awesome. I'm sorry, Daria. Go ahead.
Just having more fulfillment in being a therapist again.
I think it's so awesome that we've gotten to hear your story and how, you know, you started and then you went into supervision and now you're excited now about going back into, you know, one-on-one therapy.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's awesome. I hope for you all that are listening that gives you a little glimmer of hope, because life's right. What do they say? Life is lifing, and and you know, and life is lifing as we are speech pathologists, and so those experiences, those feelings that we have, they go up and down. And I just think that Daria is a prime example about that you may feel one way about something at a certain time in your life, and it can come full circle. Which is why I'm still a speech pathologist right now. Iodella, you want to chime in?
Oh, yes. I want to say, can I tell you, Daria was when I first was hired, our supervisor had me watch Daria's sessions to let me see if I wanted to be a clinician. She was working with the autistic population at that time. Can I tell you, she was a hard-working therapist. So as a supervisor, she's not BSing when she tells you to work hard. However, I'm going to say I feel fulfilled when I see my students make gains, but satisfaction is at times when I'm just, you know, when I'm working and I'm not seeing what I need. That's when I feel sad. But when I see my kids, like one of my students, my middle school students, got into the high school he wanted to get into, and he said he wouldn't have done it without me. I didn't want to tell him, yes, you would have done it, but I told you, come to my office at lunchtime and you're going to write your, like he had to write a, you know, response. He had to give a written response to get into the school. I said, that's the only difference. It was you had the ability. It's just you needed someone to, you know, give you that push. So that's when I feel fulfilled, when my kids tell me they're doing well, or even my little babies, when I see them writing their names, or when I see them answering questions, written questions. I'm like, shoot, you could do that at 4. I want to say maybe you don't need speech, but Maybe they do, maybe they don't. They gave them to me for the year, and we'll see what the next clinician does with them, because most of my kids don't speak English that well.
Mhm,
And I don't speak Spanish that well to really decide.
mhm, mhm. Thank you so much. Anybody else want to chime in on
I
satisfaction?
would I would say I feel fulfilled like ideally when my students come to me and say, I wouldn't have been able to do this without you, or, when you sit across from me and we work on stuff, I feel seen and heard by you. So I would say that's when I feel the most fulfilled. But I am a millennial, so my millennial energy doesn't allow me to sit in one place too long. But again, I have those, so at times I feel satisfied and I have those extraneous factors to think about when pivoting. So I'm ready for a pivot, but I just don't know where I really, really want to go or where I can go. So
Thank you for sharing, Latavia. Anybody else want to chime in? Or I give you guys a little bit more on me. Oh, okay, we're gonna move forward. So there is a difference between these two words, satisfied and being fulfilled. I think that satisfied is just being okay with something, but I think there's a deeper level of joy, there's a deeper level of purpose with the word fulfilled and feeling fulfilled. And so I think that's what you all need to ask yourself where you are. Are you just satisfied? And listen, there's no right or wrong answer, because there are certain, what's going on in my life is not going on in your life. What's going on in your life may not be going on in Latavia or Ayodele's life. And sometimes you just got to be satisfied with where you are and be content. And that's okay. You know what I'm saying? For whatever you're going through in your life. And I think it's important to realize that. So it's not no right or wrong thing. It's just about what is going to serve you at that time. I was okay. When I remember working in the nursing home, I was satisfied with working in a nursing home. Did I like it that much? No, but it paid. It took care of things that I needed to take care of. Okay, and finances. And at that time I was like, I wasn't going to be working at a school. I was like, oh, they pay me way more, and I was okay with that. Did I feel fulfilled doing it? No, but I knew that I could always pivot. And so that's what I'm saying. We are all on different trajectories and different journeys in life. And so you have to take what is going on in your life and know sometimes you're going to be satisfied. It's just, you're going to be content. You're going to be pleased. Okay. And then comes a time in life where you want to feel fulfilled. I'm at the place in my life where I want more fulfillment. Okay. And that doesn't mean you have to be there, but I just think it's good to recognize these two terms and to know that they play a part in you wanting to pivot. Okay. So, lunch with myself at Mariano's, and this is a little story time, and I think it's just really important for you all to hear this and what was going on with me. And so when I was in grad school, something happened with my application, and I got approved with I got accepted at my program a little bit later in the summer. And so I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my life. And I'm like, okay, I had always wanted to be like, I grew up in the church, and that was just something that was just always been a passion of mine. So I'm like, okay, if I don't get into grad school, then I'm just going to go to seminary. So that was my fallback on, but that was my right. I was just like, I'm just going to do that. I got into grad school, so I was happy. I was, like I said, I came from an immigrant family, and I was just like, I need some money, and there's things that I need to do, people that are counting on me. So I was okay with that. I had a greater passion for more ministry work, right? But life comes full circle. And so I would say about 2019, before the pandemic, I remember having lunch with myself and having another lunch, having an episode or a time where I'm asking myself these questions that you guys had there. And it just had come, like, these feelings just kept coming to me, like, I'm not necessarily happy with what I'm doing. I'm not feeling fulfilled. Like, I love working with people. I love speech therapy, right? It wasn't that I didn't like it. I loved what I was doing at the time. I was working in the schools. I was doing home health, and I really, really love home health, right? But I started to feel this this thing where it was just like, I want to do something else. And I was actually, I had just got done. The thing that was so crazy, I had just got done, I think, with my doctorate degree in education. And I was just like, and at that moment in time, I was just like, you know what? I was sitting there at Mariano's at the store during lunchtime. And I think that was like one of the first time where I was just like, yeah, I want to minister. And I had known this for a very long time, but I just wouldn't come to the reality. Okay. But I loved speech pathology. But what was in my heart to do was to do more ministry work. Right. And so I think that was a time, I'm telling you all this because these conversations that you have with yourself help set you up for what you're going to do. And so I just remember, like, I was getting closer to 40, and I was just at a point in my life where I was just like, listen, I want to live the rest of my life doing what exactly it is that I want to do. And yes, it's speech pathology, but it incorporates speech pathology, but it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life, right? And so some other things happened. Along the way before the end of the year. I had made a decision to start ministry school, and things started, the pieces started aligning together. And to make a long story short, I'm a youth pastor. But that's not where to make a long story short, I am a youth pastor right now, but that is not where my story ends. And so I'm a youth pastor, and I still do speech pathology. I'm able to mesh the two. And one of the great things that about being in ministry for me is just that I get to use like my speech pathology skills. Like, I have a lot of special needs kids, and so I'm able to adapt lessons to where they understand it. I'm able to incorporate this into the love of God. And I'm not telling, because I'm trying to sit up here and minister anything to you, but I'm just saying that it is possible to mesh things together that you would never think that you would mesh together. And I'm able to help my parents whose children are part of our youth ministry, and consult with them and help them with their IEPs. So that's just a little bit about where I am right now, right? So just kind of hold that thought. I think Nastasia, is your hand up? Or was it just up from before? I just want to make sure that, okay, I think maybe it's just up.
Oh, I'm sorry, you can lower it.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that I was able to do that. Okay. Okay. So that's a little bit about my story right now. Like I said, I'm still a speech pathologist. I am able to do the best of both worlds. I am looking into transitioning. I am going to be transitioning or pivoting into full-time ministry, which I am full-time, but where I'm not going to be doing speech, but this is all the process. But we're going to kind of hold that because that's going to come a little bit. We're going to talk about that shortly. So then this next slide says the pivoter is pivoting because. So these are reasons why people pivot. Okay. Like I said, when I looked at the research, a lot of speech pathologists go from one setting to another setting because of salary, right? They want an increase in salary. Another reason, your philosophies and goals change as a person. Like what I wanted in my 20s is not what I want in my 40s, right? What you want in your 40s may not be what you want 10 years from now, but all the different life experiences that we all have as people, this contributes to what causes us to pivot. And so people may change in their philosophies. They may change in their goals. They may say, hey, I was working at a crappy job with crappy ethics, and I no longer want to do that. So I want to pivot into another setting in speech pathology, or I want to go and work in a nonprofit sector and not have to worry about some of the things that go with a for-profit kind of business. Well, I don't want to say all of them. And then incompetent leadership at a current job. That may be, that was one of the reasons that I saw that some people pivot. outside, pivot into another career or within another setting. Okay, they want greater flexibility. Okay, who likes flexibility? Because I love, as an independent contractor, I love my flexibility. Yeah, I think because I started where I started my practicum, or like my CFY, how I started it was a big contributed to why I think I bounce around so much and enjoy that. I enjoy being, especially earlier in my career. I like to stay put a little bit more now. But earlier in my career, I would drive here and there. Now I'm kind of like, I work in the school system and I love it, love it, love it. And I love pouring into the young people there. Burnout is another reason why people, how many of you all feel burned out? I know at a point in my career, how many of you all have ever felt burnt out? You may not feel burned out now, but who has felt burnt out and they thought that they wanted to leave the career? Right.
I
Right.
have.
Right. We're sisters here. We're talking because it's real. You may not be burned out now, and so you may just need to just pump your brakes. But this is a real reason some people are experiencing burnout, because there's not enough speech pathologists in this field. Like when in doing home health, and I don't do a lot of home health anymore, but I was working in the inner city Chicago, in the hood, okay, where you may hear gunshots. And I was very satisfied and fulfilled. Like I just felt like, if I don't go, who's gonna go? And so, but now that I'm not going into those settings, there's a huge hole there. And I'm still getting people calling me, trying to get me to go back. You know what I mean? But it's a different season for me now. And so that's something that I'm not going to do, right? But there's a huge gap, right? And so those of us that are in the field are getting taxed because there's not enough of us. There's not enough speech pathologists in the medical field, in home health, right? In schools. And so that's how burnout comes. So that's some of the reason people are pivoting out. When in reality, and when I look at my decisions, and some of you seasoned therapists, if you all can chime into this, when I look at my decisions, right, I was letting people pressure me into doing more and more, and I felt like I could not say no. And some of that I had to look at myself and say, you know what, girl, I got a good therapist that helped me with boundaries, because you don't have to be burned out. When you have to start valuing yourself and what you want in your mental health, and all of these factors come into play into being a good clinician, right? When you're burnt out, you can't be the best clinician that you want to be when you're burnt out. Am I lying? Somebody give me some feedback. No. Right. So we know, what? I don't need to be working on Saturdays. Oh, I don't need to go here. If I can't be the best, if I can't be good for blessing, I can't be good for those that I am servicing. Okay, so burnout is a reason why people leave, and then not feeling fulfilled. And so in some of that research I saw was that people not seeing the progress that they want to see, or feeling like they're in systems that hinder progress. I have been in school systems like that. So Nastasia, I definitely know what you're talking about, because I remember being a new grad and like, what do you mean I can't discharge somebody? They didn't tell me this in school. I feeling like that was a total slap. Like, what do you mean? And so, or just, not being able to discharge it. And it's just feeling like, this kid is coming here, this is where they are, and just feeling like you're not going to see the progress, or not seeing progress. Or how about this situation, being in a skilled nursing, and like, this company is not right. They're trying to push you to see somebody. I just had this situation where a swallow test came back, and the patient he has some type of object that's impeding his swallow. But the moral of the story is that he needed to be discharged and referred for he needed a specialist to see him. There was nothing that we could do. And the rehab therapist, the DOR was like, oh, can you see him today? And, and because I am more advanced in my career and I feel more confident in myself, I was like, no, he needs to be discharged. I'm not seeing him. Well, the discharge is set for tomorrow. Well, we need to set it for today. Okay. And so sometimes I think as I went through my career, I just felt like some of the companies were corrupt. And it was just like, this is why I had to ask myself, I didn't sign up for this. Intentionally sign up for this. And so these are some reasons why pivoters are pivoting, okay? Let's look at this. Things that make you go, when pivoting. And you guys remember that song back in the day, Things That Make You Go, for the season. There was a song called Things That Make You Go, And so I thought that this title was fitting for this, because the are things that make you go when pivoting, things that you need to consider when pivoting, right? Whether you're pivoting totally out of the career or you're just pivoting into another setting, right? Let's say you're going from early intervention to home health. Like I went from schools to hospitals. Things to consider. For me, in the beginning of my career, money was a big factor. Okay, that's not a huge factor to me like that. That doesn't drive me, like I'm going to do my best work, but I'm just saying it doesn't drive me like that. You just get to a point in your life where like, not saying that money is not important, because it's important, but so these are things that you need to consider if you are thinking about pivoting. Number one, count the cost, right? Like I said, we're all in different places right now. Is it worth it for you to pivot? Only you can answer that question. But I would encourage you to write down a list of things and the pros and write down the cons. Okay. And then only you can determine, is it worth it? But before you decide to pivot, you need to, count the cost. Is important before you know if you can actually do it. Okay. Is it the right time? I don't know what your family situation is. I don't know what your financial system looks like. I don't know who's counting on you or whatever the situation is, but timing is everything. Okay. What I was able to do, the freedom that I have now to do some things, my life is a little bit different. So if I wanted to pivot and just kind of do a different work, I have a spouse. I have somebody that I can rely on, that I can lean on or rely on to help me if I want to make some changes in life. And so timing is everything. It may not be the right time for you to pivot. Okay. And then if you are thinking about it, research the career you're thinking about pivoting into, if it's a different career, or research the setting you want to pivot into. Now, one of the things that I spoke about was just being exposed to different settings. This is why it is so important in your skill set not to get stuck in a particular setting, because when you try to move out of that setting, I've known speech therapists that just worked in the medical field, and then 10, 15 years later, it may be easier now because we're such a high demand, but they've had difficulty getting into education because they've worked in the medical side of it all of their career. And, now you're going into education. And so it wasn't always an easy transition. Hone your guys' skills. I always say, like, for me, doing a 5-year checkup with your skills is so important, because, you may stay in a setting too long. Ask yourself, have I learned everything that I need to learn in this particular setting? Have I maximized what for right now? Am I okay with where I'm at with what I know right now? Is there another setting that I need to be in? I have a really good, I call her my good Judy, meaning my good girlfriend. And she is young in the field. And I just appreciate her youthfulness in the field, because it kind of like re-energized me and causes me to look at things differently. And plus, she went to school at a totally different time that I went to school. So of course there has been like new research that's out. And one of the things that she absolutely has a passion for is feeding. And so she wants to get into feeding, and she has been working in the school system and in the preschool setting for about 4 years now. And so she was just like, oh, Dr. Blessing, she was telling me about this. And I'm like, hey, okay, you've been in the setting for 4 years, you're about to go a 5th year. You need to start, if this is what you want to do, you need to start mapping, which is my next point. Right? Things to consider. You need to start mapping out how you're going to get to where you want to be. because it just, nothing happens. You have to plan that stuff out. If you don't have experience, you need, so I sent her information on an organization that does feeding. I sent her jobs that she can look into. I sent her trainings on feeding, just because these are things that I wish somebody would have done for me when I was young in my career. And I just encouraged her, because the school that we work at, they really rely on, we're actually both lead therapists there, and they really rely on her for things. And I'm like, listen, don't get stuck here. That's not me telling her, stay here, but don't get stuck. No, I think it's very important as clinicians to know when your time is up or when your season is up in a particular setting. That's really important to know, because while you may be thinking, I need to leave the field, it just may be that you need to do something new. And that's what I have experienced. That's why when I thought within my first or second year, I'm like, I want to be a nurse practitioner. I was so glad that I stuck with it. I didn't have a mentor like that, but I'm so glad that I stuck with it. And I just realized, no, you just need to change it up. You just need a new setting. Oh, you need to take a class on this because you want to do that. So map out, things to consider. Map it out. These pivots, you can't just pivot just like that, especially if you're going into another field. You have to research that. You have to see how long it take for me to be able to pivot. And then evaluating your skills, your skill set. If you want to pivot out the field, do you have the skills that you want to for the career that you want to be in? I read an article, and doing research for this, I read an article about a speech pathologist that actually in her she wasn't fulfilled. She just didn't want to be in the field. This is a big reason why mentors are so important, but that's a whole nother story. She didn't want to be in the field, but basically she met a friend that was in tech. The girl taught herself how to code, and she ended up making, she got an internship from LinkedIn. Someone saw her resume. She got an internship, ended up getting a job, making $90,000 a year. The girl is now a software engineer. Okay, she took some classes here and there, but my whole thing is evaluate your skills. She knew that she wanted to get out of the field, and I want you all to understand, I cannot stress this enough. I'm not trying to push you out, but I'm just trying to put things on your mind to think about, that if you are moving from education, from being an educational speech pathologist to working in skilled nursing or a hospital, you have to brush up your skill set. I haven't worked in home health for a year because I at the beginning of January, I took a job as a lead therapist in a school system. And then now I kind of do some home health. I just started doing home health again, but I don't go into it's just around my house. But within that time, within that year, it was like, man, because I've been doing school so much, my mind was totally school focused. And I had to go back and look at some things like, like, why is this not, it's not coming as quickly as it used to, just from being out of that setting for a year. So evaluate your skills, okay? Evaluate your skills, make them, map it out, look and see how much time it's going to take you. Network and make connections. This woman that I'm telling you, this is a true story. She didn't use her real name, but it is a true story. She was able to network with some of her friends when she was telling them she didn't enjoy her career. Someone told her about a career in tech, and she just started networking with people. You all, man, it's not always about what you know, but who you know. So, you never know. I've had opportunities come to me for teaching just because of who I knew or who knew me, right? Or someone knew somebody that I knew. And so, network if you want to pivot, and if you want to pivot into another career or even to a different setting, get with somebody that's in that setting that can help you transition and make the transition smoother for you. And then assess your resume and your cover letter. Okay, so these are all things to consider. Everything, you need a plan. It's not going to happen overnight. And even though, like I told you, I'm a youth pastor, my desire is to really, have a center And I'm an entrepreneur by spirit as well. And so I'm working on some things in daycare, and then having a place where people can come and do speech pathology within the building and so speech is not totally far from me. I might just have to put it on the back burner, put it on the side for a little while. But that is the wonderful thing about our career. If you're thinking about pivoting totally out of the career, you can still, survive on doing contractual work or doing part-time work while you are working on getting into another career. Right? I'm doing a certification class right now. That's going to help me to accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish, while I'm in school, while I'm in training, while I am making this whole pastoral transition, but I still have my speech pathology degree to rely on to help me to pay for things that need to be paid for. And I'm looking at the time, and let me hurry up, you all. I'm sorry about that. The great crossover from speech to, right? So I have friends, like I told you about my friend that was an accountant. She went from being an accountant to a speech pathologist, from a speech pathologist to now her and her husband own their own restaurant. Okay, I have a friend that went from being an OT, and it's actually not an OT, it's actually a CODA, so it should be OTA, to now being a speech pathologist. Okay, an accountant, I told you about that one. A friend that is an SLP, does acting, and then goes back to being an SLP. A friend that's an SLP and now is a dean/provost, right? A friend that was a special education teacher and is now a speech pathologist. Okay, so when I say the great crossover, there are so many other related fields. At one point in time, I thought maybe I wanted to be an ENT, right? And I'm just saying all of this, that there are so many related fields. I just want to encourage you all that you don't totally have to get away from the field, and you just never know when this degree is going to come. You may think, oh, I'm wanting to get out of this field, but you'll be surprised at how life comes full circle and you'll be using it again. Okay, and then last and finally, just do it, you all. Like I said, you can get older and be stuck, or you can get older and be fulfilled. Okay. And that's how I always like to just kind of look at life. And what my pastor told me, like, hey, either way, we're aging every day. So you can be fulfilled in the work that you're doing as a speech pathologist. And if you're not fulfilled in the work that you're doing as a speech pathologist, be fulfilled in another setting. If you leave challenge yourself to leave the particular setting you're in and go into another setting, or challenge yourself to just jump and go into a different career. Okay. And I hope that is all. I'm sorry, I kind of went over my time. I really enjoyed our dialogue, but I just want to encourage you all, jump in at any time. If you guys have any feedback on what we have been talking about and what I presented, I would love to hear it. Love to hear kind of what you guys are kind of thinking to continue to move the conversation forward. Okay. Okay. Well.